Hi class, welcome to Chapter 2. This chapter will discuss guidelines for designing a healthy diet. Food philosophy. So food philosophy is important. I actually don't like this much. It says control how much you eat. I think control is kind of a negative term. Instead, maybe be aware or be conscious of what you eat. Choose fruits, veggies, whole grains. Those are all pictured here. They're colorful, they're nutrient rich, they're full of vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. And this is kind of a question, but also a statement: no good or bad foods. This is something I do believe. I do not think foods are bad. I do think foods are mostly good. However, there are foods that are better choices than others. And those better choices should be made more often, where the foods that maybe aren't as good a choice should be made less often. But I don't think that foods should be bad. Variety. Variety is very important. Choosing foods from each group. We've got our proteins, our grains, our fruits, our veggies, and our dairy. Choosing a variety of color because different foods provide different antioxidants, different phytonutrients, and choosing functional foods, foods that will give you an extra advantage, such as foods with some probiotics or prebiotics, the healthy bacteria that live in your intestine or the food that those bacteria need, or some foods with some omega-3 fatty acids that can serve anti-inflammatory properties. Can you think of some tips to increase fruits and vegetables? I believe you can. I would say, I know you don't have a partner because this is an online class, but try to think of 10 different ways that you can increase fruits and vegetables. There's many, many different ways, and then perhaps we'll talk about them near the end of this. Proportionality and balance are important. So having bigger portions of foods that are healthy versus bigger portions of foods that are maybe not so healthy. So balancing high nutrient foods with foods that are maybe not so high in nutrients. Nutrient density. So nutrient density is a term used to determine nutritional quality, and it compares the amounts of vitamins and minerals in a certain food to the amount of calories. So for example, here you have a milk and a soda. But when looking at the different nutrients in each, you can see that the milk has protein, vitamin A, vitamin C, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, calcium, and iron. And the soda just has calories. So nutrient density can be actually calculated by dividing the amount of any one nutrient, so for example protein, by the amount of calories that product has. And then you can get a number as far as how nutrient dense a product is for protein, or how nutrient dense it is for vitamin A, or how nutrient dense it is for calcium, and you can compare it to other similar caloric products. Many low-cost nutrient-dense foods are out there which can be really, really healthy and incorporated into a great balanced diet. Some of them are fat-free milk, lean meats, beans, fruits, veggies, whole grains, and bagged cereals. Fruits and veggies are great to get at farmers markets. You can get them for very low cost. I often go to the swap meet to buy my fruits and veggies. I also even go to the dollar store where I can get fresh fruits and veggies, and that's a really, really good deal. Empty calorie foods are foods that do not have a lot of nutrients, meaning they don't have a lot of vitamins, they don't have a lot of minerals, and they don't have a lot of protein, but they just have a lot of calories. And these foods are foods that potentially we should eat less of. So chips, soda, cookies, and candies. Moderation. So in the last 30 years, portion sizes have really just skyrocketed. And Science has proven that when we are served a bigger portion, we are more likely to eat a bigger portion. Also, when we are served a bigger portion, we're more likely to expect a bigger portion. So if we were to get the tiny portions of 20 years ago, even 30 years ago, we would probably be disappointed in our purchase. These bigger portion sizes have definitely contributed to the rising obesity rates, as well as the rising rates of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, and metabolic syndrome. Here's just another picture of portion size, and this is comparing what you're actually served versus what actually a portion is. I think most of us would be pretty disappointed if we ordered our meal and we only received a 1/4 pound cheeseburger. Some of the fries, you don't even have the top half of the bun there. You only have half of the bun. You only get a little ketchup, 2 pickles, small piece of lettuce, small piece of tomato, etc. So what we're given versus what we actually need to eat is very, very different. Energy density. Energy density is a little bit different than nutrient density. Energy density refers to calories in the food and compares those calories in the food to how much that food weighs. So high energy dense foods are things like nuts, cookies, fried foods, bacon, and chips. That means they have a lot of calories per weight. Low energy dense foods are things like fruits, veggies, oatmeal, etc. And low energy dense foods are great because they usually have a pretty high weight but not that many calories. And so they can make us feel very full. Energy density can really be visualized in these pictures here. So on the far right, you have a picture of somebody's stomach with 400 calories of vegetables in it. You see the stomach is totally full. Then you have 400 calories of chicken, the stomach's about half full, and 400 calories of oil, the stomach is barely full. So oil is very, very energy dense. The veggies are not very energy dense, and so you can eat a lot of them without getting so many calories. At the bottom of the slide, you have different 100-calorie snacks. The jelly beans are on the far left. Those would be very energy dense versus the cherry tomatoes on the far right, which are not very energy dense. Dietary guidelines for Americans. So the dietary guidelines for Americans are a set of guidelines provided by the USDA and the Department of Health and Human Services, and they are made to aid in diet planning and extending healthy, disease-free lifespan. So some of the guidelines that are nutrition related include obesity prevention, reducing food insecurity, and reducing chronic diseases. And food insecurity is inadequate access to food, inadequate quantity or quality of foods, uncomfortable foods for health, unacceptable foods, not having enough money to buy foods that somebody needs. The dietary guidelines help develop educational materials, and we can use these in our schools, both elementary and high school, as well as colleges, and help policymakers decide legislation. For example, the dietary guidelines have helped with creation of our nutrition facts labels and bans on trans fats. These are some components of the dietary guidelines that you can read over on your own. Balancing calories is important. Foods and food components to reduce are important, as well as foods to increase. Obviously, we want to increase our fruits and veggies, our whole grains, reduce our salt, our saturated fat, and our cholesterol. Dietary goals. So this chart is looking at individual calorie needs for people depending on their age, their gender, and their activity level. You can see that in general, females need slightly less calories than male, and with increasing activity, any given person will need more calories. So that probably makes a lot of sense. And it's important to maintain calorie balance, meaning you eat the calories you need for daily life, but you don't eat too many, Otherwise, that could lead to weight gain. And you also eat enough. Otherwise, it could lead to weight loss. Foods and food components to reduce. So on the top half of this table is foods that we should increase. However, none of those we're eating enough of. And on the bottom half of this table are foods we should decrease, but yet again, we are eating way too much of them. Calories from SOFAS is from solid fats and added sugars. And these are generally saturated fats and white sugar that have been added into the foods. Both have negative health consequences. Foods to increase, these are all very, very healthy foods, fiber-rich foods, vitamin-rich foods, seeds, nuts, legumes, whole grains, etc. Physical activity. So how much should we get? What's actually recommended? It is recommended that we get at least 150 minutes per week, which comes out to about 30 minutes per day. And children and adolescents should get 60 minutes per day. It is good to do a variety of exercise. So aerobic means it's going to get your heart rate up, as well as some strength training exercises, as well as some flexibility and body movement exercises. MyPlate. MyPlate is our government's latest kind of release as the leading depiction for a healthy eating plan. And this replaced the very familiar food guide pyramid or My Pyramid. MyPlate is supposed to give us a visual cue as to what our plate should look like every time we have a meal. And myplate.gov is a website with many, many very interactive and helpful tools that you can use. So I recommend you check that out. These are some of the messages from MyPlate that you can read in your book, but make half your plates fruits and veggies, making half your grains whole, just overall picking a healthier plate for your diet. There are food patterns allowed with MyPlate. Depending on which calorie level you are, you could look at these food patterns and determine how much of each type of food you should eat. For example, if I was following a 2,000 calorie diet, I should eat 2 cups of fruit per day. And what counts as these servings? 1 cup of fruit would be 1 cup of fruit, or 1 cup of 100% fruit juice, or half cup of dried fruit. Because dried fruits have the water removed from them, they end up being much smaller, and you don't have to eat as many of them to get a serving. Just be careful with dried fruits though, because many dried fruits have added sugars. This picture is representing some serving size comparisons or common household items, or even things you can look at on your own hand to estimate serving sizes. And so 1 cup is about as big as your fist, a half a cup is about a small handful, 3 ounces is about as big of a deck of cards or a computer mouse, a 4th cup, a golf ball, 1.5 ounces, 6 die, 1 teaspoon, tip of the thumb. Portion sizes. So again, I know you don't have a neighbor, but think about what you last ate and try to guess how big that actually was. What did I last eat? I last ate a salad, and if I had to guess, I would say it was probably 3 or 4 cups of lettuce. It was a lot of lettuce, and then there was probably about 1/4 of a cup of tomatoes, lettuce, carrots, beans, probably about a half a cup of chicken, and about 1/4 of a cup of ranch dressing on the side, which I did not use all of it. But it's very interesting to think about portion sizes and realize how much you actually are eating. Mediterranean diet pyramid. So this is not something from the US government, but this is something that has been followed across Mediterranean regions across the globe. And the Mediterranean diet pyramid has been associated with some very helpful lifestyles, lower risk from cardiovascular disease, as well as longevity. So it's a slightly different take on which foods are important and how to eat them. States of nutrition. So, we do want desirable nutrition. The ultimate goal of nutrition is to promote optimal health, reduce sickness, and give adequate calories to maintain weight. Malnutrition. Somebody can be both over and undernourished. The term malnutrition literally just means bad. And so you can have malnutrition if you have an excess of calories. You can also have malnutrition if you do not have enough calories or do not have enough of a certain nutrient. These are some pictures of undernutrition. On the bottom is members in Nazi Germany concentration camps. On the top is a picture of some pretty nasty teeth. And this actually is a picture of something called scurvy, which is the result of a very severe vitamin C deficiency. Overnutrition. So it is possible to overeat your micro or macronutrients. This can result in obesity. In the case of overnutrition with alcohol, this can cause negative effects to a baby. Babies can also be affected when moms overconsume supplement sources of vitamin A, as well as any sort of drug that's not indicated during pregnancy. So what do we do when we are measuring people's health? There are many things to consider when looking at somebody's health and trying to assess how healthy they are. First, you want to look at their background. What's their medical history? What types of diseases or illnesses or surgeries have they had? What current meds are they taking, both prescription and over the counter? Social history, who do they live with? Do they work? Do they have help at home? Level of education. Level of education has been shown to directly correlate to nutrition education. Economic status. Are they able to afford foods that they need and want? And then the A, B, C, Ds, and E's. Anthropometrics, which is measurable values such as height and weight. Biochemical would be laboratory values, concentration of nutrients in the blood or the urine. Clinical would be a clinical exam, listening to heart rate, taking blood pressure, a doctor's physical exam. Dietary might include something like a 24-hour recall where somebody would tell you what they have eaten in the last 24 hours. And environment has to do with their total environment, meaning where they live, who they live with, what town they live, are they food insecure, what kind of house do they live in, does that house have a fridge, a freezer, a stove, a microwave, running water, etc. Limitations of nutrition assessment. So many nutrition-related diseases actually don't show themselves for years and years and years. And then at that point, sometimes we don't know if those are nutrition-related or just the result of old age or other illness. Examples are bone disease. Are those old age related, or are they due to chronic undernutrition in calcium and vitamin C? Other nutrition issues are not specific. Diarrhea and sores on skin could be caused by many reasons, nutrition including. So how do you know if it's a vitamin or mineral deficiency versus a infectious pathogen or a virus or a bacteria or some food poisoning? How do you know how much you need? So the dietary reference intakes are a set of guidelines that encompass nutrient recommendations made by the Food and Nutrition Board of the Institute of Medicine. And they include the RDAs, the AIs, the EER, the upper limit, and the EAR, the estimated average requirement. So we're going to talk about each of these. RDA, this is the nutrient amount sufficient to meet the needs of 97 to 98% of the individuals in a certain life stage. And this will prevent disease and illness. And the RDA is based on 2 standard deviations of the EAR. AI, adequate intakes. So nutrient intake amount set for any nutrient which insufficient research is available to establish an RDA. So RDAs are the result of very, very detailed research. An AI is established when there is not enough research to establish an RDA. EER. This has to do with energy needs, and energy, remember, is calories. And so this is the overall daily caloric need for each life stage. Upper limit. This is the maximum chronic daily intake level of a nutrient that is unlikely to cause adverse health effects in almost all people. So you can eat up to this amount and be okay. And this is based on nutrient intakes from all sources for the majority of nutrients, except for nickel, magnesium, zinc, and those are the three. This is a diagram of what these abbreviations represent and how that's related to mortality. So here you see the RDA, and the RDA will cover the nutrient needs for about 97-98% of the population. The AI is where intakes have been observed to be adequate. So here you see there are 0 people deficient. And then the UL is something you don't want to exceed, because to the right of the UL, there is risks of toxicity. Daily value. So daily value is a rough guide for comparing nutrient contents on food labels. And the daily values are based on the RDIs and the DRVs. The daily values are for people 4 age and up, except for pregnant or lactating women, and they're based on a standard 2,000 calorie diet. This is the current nutrition facts label, but the nutrition facts label will be changing very soon. Evaluating nutrition information. So you guys are active readers and consumers of nutrition information, and it's very key that you evaluate the sources. Where does it come from? Who wrote it? What are their credentials? Are there extreme claims? Are there money-back guarantees or promises of weight loss in 48 hours? Is it sponsored by a company? Is there some sort of ulterior motive? Are there medical breakthroughs? Are things cure-alls? Because cure-alls usually cure nothing. So it's very crucial to be a kind of cautious reader and cautious investigator. Anybody can call themselves a nutritionist, but only certain individuals can call themselves registered dietitian nutritionists. And these people have gone to accredited colleges, earned at the very least their bachelor's degree, taking specially regulated classes. Then they have attended a 1-year internship and sat for a board certified examination. These are some additional questions to ask when you're reading nutrition research that can help you evaluate it. And that is the end of the chapter. So in summary, who we talked about today, what we talked about, when, where, and why. All right, that's the end for chapter 2. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye.